I'm Olek Novak, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the most expensive Mitsubishi that you can buy in Australia. The Mitsubishi Outlander GSR, the top spec plug-in hybrid electric version of the mid-size family SUV, and it costs just under 80 grand drive away. So is it worth it? Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Now, you'd be well familiar with the Mitsubishi Outlander by now. The current generation, it's been out for a bit of time, and you would see that it's selling like hotcakes. So there are a lot of these on the roads. It is the second highest selling midsize SUV in the segment, behind the Toyota RAV4. Not only that, but it is Mitsubishi's highest selling vehicle in Australia. And if you still watch free-to-air TV, you'd see that it's even apparently good enough for Russell Coight to appear in an ad campaign about it. So we want to find out, is it actually that good? In some ways, there's already been a lot of content about this vehicle on Chasing Cars. Our production specialist, Tom Place, has driven around in one for 6 months as a long-term test car. So make sure to check out his content on that. Not only that, but we've reviewed other variants in the range, and we've also driven it off-road in Japan to find that it is surprisingly capable off-road. So what's the difference with today's video? Well, we haven't driven the GSR variant, the top spec variant, which came out in April of this year. So we want to get a taste of what the top of the range model is like. Does it make sense when you're paying 80 grand for a Mitsubishi? Should you be paying that much for this variant? Not only that, but the midsize SUV market continues to evolve. There are more competitors in the hybrid segment, there are more competitors in the electric segment, there are more petrol competitors too. So this one soldiers on as a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So does it still make sense? What niche does it fill? Is it still relevant in an increasingly competitive segment? And we also want to talk about some timeliness that is important to consider if you want to buy one of these vehicles, because next year, the fringe benefits tax exemption on plug-in hybrid electric vehicles will end. Not only that, but there is an updated version of this vehicle set to come to Australia next year too. So a few things to consider if you want a Mitsubishi Outlander. Keep watching as we discuss all of that. A cool thing about the Mitsubishi Outlander is that if you want a plug-in hybrid electric variant, you can get one across almost every variant of the range, almost. Now, the GSR, you might be wondering, what do you get for stepping up to the top of the range model? You get essentially a lot of black, like this Outlander lettering over here in black. You've got some black grille surrounds over here, some more black down there below. You've got some black 20-inch wheels over here as well. Black mirror covers over here, some more black. And then also some more black around the back of the vehicle, and also a special GSR badge on the tailgate as well. On the inside, you get black leather seats with some silver stitching. So now you might be able to gather that all of this is entirely cosmetic. You don't actually have any mechanical changes with the Outlander PHEV in GSR form. Now, when we had a plug-in hybrid electric Outlander as our long-term test car, our production specialist, Tom Place, he essentially said that the Aspire, that very variant, was his kind of pick of the range. And I'd tend to agree with that. Either the Aspire, maybe the Exceed. I'd be stepping down to those mid-range variants, not the two top of the range variants, because I think you're just paying extra for cosmetic features. The lower grade variants are still well spec'd, but they lack some of those luxuries and cosmetic things that you can honestly live without, in my opinion. So really, the changes are entirely cosmetic the higher up the range you go. So what is special about the Outlander PHEV? Well, I think what's special about it is essentially the same across quite a few variants in the range, and that is that it offers a plug-in hybrid electric powertrain, 7 seats, and all-wheel drive. Now, over 20% of Outlander buyers this year are choosing the plug-in hybrid electric Outlander. And really, in terms of its closest competitors, the RAV4, the CX-5, the Forester, those vehicles don't offer what this vehicle offers in terms of that powertrain option. That said, there is increasing competition from China. So there is the BYD C-Line 6. It is significantly cheaper. Not only that, but next year there's going to be the MG H6, the new version of that plug-in hybrid electric form. So competition is going to start to increase to compete against this Mitsubishi Outlander, which has so far dominated a nice little niche in market. So let's see how it stacks up. We're going to start with the interior. So what's the interior of the Outlander GSR like? Well, I guess my kind of general assessment would be that it does the job. Like, it's not a bad interior by any means, but I guess when you are stepping in a vehicle of 80k value, you probably have some expectations of it, which, look, it's not a bad interior, like I said, but at the same time, there are a few flaws that I'll go through as well. Firstly, I guess one of the key things that I did notice when I stepped into this vehicle, and anyone who's driven an Outlander might agree, and this might be a positive or negative for them, is that it's got a pretty commanding driving position. This is a mid-size SUV, but it feels like a pretty commanding big rig of a car. So for example, I've recently spent some time just last week in a Cupra Ateca, which is also classed as a mid-size SUV, but it feels much smaller. Whereas when I'm in this vehicle, it feels like a substantial vehicle. Some people may love that big footprint of a car. They might see that as a safety feature. So you'll either love it or hate it. I've been driving through some really tight underground car parks this week, and I've been paranoid not to curb those wheels. So that is just something to note. I guess one advantage is it's pretty spacious, the ergonomics are pretty good, it's pretty comfortable, the seats are nice, we've got some nice black leather here with this kind of diamond pattern in it as well, which is not bad. Ergonomically, it's quite good. So you've got a pretty good steering wheel over here, you've got a lot of soft touch. You can tell its roots as a more base spec mainstream vehicle. I don't know if it necessarily feels that high end, even though there are a lot of premium-ish features. And that maybe seem a bit cheap. And also with the door, for example, that might feel a bit, look a bit hollow potentially, and you can kind of move it around a bit. So it's not the most solidly built vehicle, but at the same time, it's not bad. The design is pretty nice. It's definitely not inoffensive. I do appreciate the fact that you've got things like physical buttons over here, so that all works quite nicely. You've got the shift lever, which is pretty easy to get used to over here. There is some piano black that might get a bit worn and dusty over time. Everyone complains about it. It looks all right now, but we'll see how it stands the test of time. Other than that, storage standard, you've got the glove box, you've got the cubby over here, 2 cup holders, and then tech, that's probably where maybe this vehicle isn't as advanced. So you've got a screen in front of you, a digital instrument cluster, and then also this touch screen over here. I think the graphics, they're probably a bit dated, particularly if you look at the maps and the functionality of this. If you're not in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, yeah, it's a bit basic. So that is one thing to consider with this vehicle. Not only that, but look, it's got a wireless charger. For me this week, that was very temperamental in terms of being a bit off and on in terms of working. So that's another thing to consider too. But overall, in terms of the interior ambience, I think, look, it's feature packed, yes, that you can sense its beginnings as a more mainstream SUV. And when you're spending 80 grand, that might be a consideration for some people. On the other hand, lots of features, electric adjustability, massage functions, heated electric seats as well. You at least get all the features. Rear seats, pretty good in a lot of ways. So for example, you'll see here 183 centimeters tall for me, and I'm sitting behind my own driving position. Legroom, excellent. Look, toe room, if I tuck them in under there, not that great, but I've got lots of legroom, so that's good. Knee room is good. Maybe under thigh support, maybe a bit more would be nice, but honestly, the seats are pretty comfy. The good thing is that you can recline them a bit as well. So that's a nice, cool little feature. And you can also slide them backwards and forwards too. So that helps to determine how much space you give the third row passengers of this vehicle. You've got a little tunnel over here, but it's pretty low. So it's honestly not too bad. One element, however, is while I've got good room over here, headroom, not the best. And that's predominantly because I think we've got the panoramic roof over here, which is great that it's got a sunshade which is completely dark that doesn't let light through. So that's great that it has that as opposed to just an open glass roof. But yes, headroom is impacted for me as a result of that. So that would be a consideration point for me. Other than that, in terms of amenities, it's pretty good. So you've got some lots of pockets. You've got map pockets either side, but then you've got 2 pockets above that for your phone or for your tablet or other things as well. So that's really good. Rear air vents, a 3rd climate control zone, which is good, and the rear outboard seats are heated. You can drop this down as well to reveal 2 cup holders and a center armrest. So the rear amenities are pretty good. Yes, it is quite dark, but at the same time, the sunroof lets a bit of light in. Now we can pull this little sunshade up too on the rear seats. That's a good little element too. And again, you've got that diamond stitch kind of quilted theme continuing. Again, the doors maybe a bit hollow. And again, the materials, maybe they're not the most premium, the nicest, but really soft, which is good at least for people in the back of the vehicle. One other element to note is that down here, you've got a USB-C and USB-A port, but you've also got another 3-pin socket over here. So you can do things like charge your laptop. For example, the vehicle has vehicle to load, vehicle to grid, and vehicle to everything capability. So that is another little trick up the Outlander PHEV's sleeve too. But let's check out the third row, which is another key unique selling proposition, the fact that this can seat 7 people, theoretically. Look, at least it's got a third row, but really this is for little kids, if anyone. Alrighty, let's check out the boot space in the back of the Outlander GSR through the electric power tailgate. So let's start with capacity first, because there's a few different capacities depending on how many rows of seats you've got up. So if you've got both the second and third row up, you've got just over 190 litres of boot space. If you've got the third row down, you've got just over 460 litres of boot space. And if you have the second and third row down, you've got just over 1,380 litres of boot space. So pretty versatile in that sense. So what kind of amenities do you get in the back of the Outlander? Well, no spare wheel, so that is a consideration, but you do get a few other things. So you do have a nice little 3-phase power point over here. So like in the back seats, you can also plug things into the back of the vehicle as well. So that is great to see. You've got some quick release levers over here to drop the seats as well. You've got a cargo cover over here. You've got some luggage hooks over here as well. Not only that, but you have a mode 2 and a mode 3 charging cable, which is great that you've got both those cables as standard. Not only that, but I do like this cool little feature with this particular bag for the charging cable. It has Velcro on the bottoms to stop it sliding around in the boot. So that's a really cool, nifty little feature. Now, while we're on the topic of charging cables, one cool thing to note about this PHEV is the fact that Mitsubishi, with this vehicle, you can charge it with a CHAdeMO DC fast charger. So not all PHEVs offer that capability to fast charge the vehicle, so that is great. And Mitsubishi says that you can charge it from 0 to 80% in about 38 minutes. So that is really cool. If you were just charging it using a standard 3-phase wall socket at home, Mitsubishi says that's going to take 9.5 hours. I did that during my time with the car. I essentially did it just before I went to sleep, woke up the next morning, the car went from 0 to 100% charge. So I think that's the kind of situation you'll be living with if you are charging it at home using a standard charger. Now, the big test though will be efficiency. So we're going to chat about that a bit later, but first let's go for a drive. Now, the Mitsubishi Outlander GSR and all the PHEVs really have a pretty unique plug-in hybrid electric powertrain system. So the engine is a 2.4 litre 4-cylinder engine, but it's also got a 20 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery and a front and rear electric motor. You might assume that it has a CVT, continuously variable transmission, but it doesn't actually. It's got a single speed transmission. And one thing to note about this vehicle, which is pretty cool, is that it can run as a pure electric vehicle, it can run as a series hybrid, or also as a parallel hybrid. Now, it's all pretty complex, so we won't go into it in too much detail, but I guess the really basic kind of summary of it is that you have the petrol engine, which powers a generator, which powers the battery, which then powers the electric motors. So essentially, that's how it can deliver power to the wheels. The petrol motor can power the front wheels directly if needed as well. The rear wheels are only powered via the electric motor. So that's the basic summary of it, but how does it all come together? It's quite imperceptible when it transitions from functioning purely as an EV to the petrol motor kicking in. So that means that generally speaking, it's a really quiet and refined drive. I think one thing to note is when it is functioning as an EV, there is a whirring kind of noise that you can hear of the electric kind of motors, but generally, I guess maybe you hear it more because it is so quiet. When the petrol motor kicks in, generally it kind of just works away in the background. If you do really put your foot down, then there can be that drone. But again, look, you're not purchasing this as a sports car to put your foot down, right? But overall, in terms of the general refinement and the nature of the hybrid system, I think that's a core competency of this vehicle, is that it works quite well. And it generally, even when you do completely deplete the electric charge, it's generally, I found it kept kicking along quite a lot with just the electric motors. Now I've actually started, because I was on 0% charge, but it started to generate a bit more charge into the battery using the petrol motor. And I guess that is a key thing to note, because there are lots of drive modes with this vehicle. So you can hit the EV button over here and switch between normal mode, pure EV mode, save mode, charge mode, and they kind of do what they say on the box. So normal mode, kind of the car the SUV decides what to do itself. It does a bit of everything. EV mode, obviously pure EV. Save mode will save the level of charge you've got, and charge mode will charge the battery back up, which it can do if you just keep driving, but of course that's going to significantly increase the fuel usage. So you can be smart about how you use the vehicle. For example, if you're on a freeway versus if you're around town, depending on when you put it into EV mode, when you put it into the other modes, to maximize that fuel usage. So it's pretty cool. What I do also enjoy is that you can fiddle with the settings for the digital instrument cluster to kind of move through some graphics, and you can see the energy flow of whether it's the battery powering the wheels, or whether the electric or whether the petrol motor is coming on to either charge the battery or power the wheels directly as well. So that's quite cool to see in that regard too. So in terms of the hybrid system, it's a core competency of this vehicle. I think most people will appreciate the way it drives. It does an effective job as a family SUV. What about the actual power? Well, I guess if you are getting a PHEV Outlander, you are getting more torque significantly. So 450 Newton meters, 185 kilowatts combined outputs, and the Outlander PHEV is good for a claimed 0 to 100 km/h sprint of 8.2 seconds. So look, this is not breakneck performance like you would get in a Tesla Model Y, but it does the job. You can get up to speed pretty quickly, especially, and I think especially when you're just functioning in pure electric mode, it is perfectly adequate. It is more than enough for what you need. Now, as well as those EV and hybrid modes that I mentioned there, you've also got a lot of different drive modes here too, which is a nice transition into talking about the steering and handling of this vehicle. So you can use this dial over here, and I appreciate that you've got some buttons that aren't buried in a screen, but actual dials and buttons over here in the center console to switch between. So you can go between power mode, eco mode, normal mode, tarmac mode, gravel mode, snow mode, and mud mode. So that is a good segue into talking about this vehicle's super all-wheel control system, which is essentially Mitsubishi's all-wheel drive system. So when we previously drove this vehicle off-road in Japan, Chasing Cars found that it was surprisingly good off-road, and as part of my road testing of the vehicle this week, I found taking it across a set of bends with a bit of a more spirited drive that you really won't be purchasing this vehicle for, but just pushing it slightly more than normal, it seemed to do a really good job. And I think that comes down to what is a really good all-wheel drive system, which can effectively modulate the torque to individual wheels to kind of just help with grip and getting around and getting through corners as well. And another thing that's cool is that if you switch through the menu settings over here with the digital instrument cluster, you can track the super all-wheel control system to just see how it's functioning and which wheels it is sending that power to as well. So that is quite cool. So overall, I think because of that, the vehicle, I thought, oh, it actually seems to do a decent job at maybe higher speeds than I would have expected. That said, it weighs a lot. It's over 2 tons. And while it seemed to handle pretty well, the body control was, look, I thought it was decent. You did feel the weight of the vehicle. So it definitely feels like an SUV in that sense. There's a lot of weight and therefore a bit of movement to it when you are really punting it around like that. So I think really this vehicle works best when it's being driven as a bit of a cruiser in a more relaxed kind of way, which I think probably makes the most of the efficiency kind of purpose that this car is set up for anyway, as a family mid-size plug-in hybrid electric SUV. The steering, look, it's light. I don't think it has that much feel or that much of a connected kind of feel to it, but it does the job. Again, like I mentioned, it's light, so I think people will appreciate it for what it is in this segment. I'm not going to complain about it in that regard. Apart from that, the other elements to talk through are the brakes. So they have a pretty good feel to them, maybe a bit spongier, maybe a bit soft, but pretty progressive, pretty easy to modulate. They do a good job. Now you can use the paddles to switch between different levels of regen depending on what you want. So that is quite good. And you can also press this button over here to put it into a maximum intelligent pedal, I believe it's called, and kind of a one pedal like driving experience too, which I quite enjoyed as well. But again, that depends on your personal taste. And I guess the next element to consider is the ride quality, because that's probably more important than the handling and the steering as a mid-sized family SUV. And overall, I think it's pretty good. I think the vehicle feels pretty softly sprung. If you really brake and accelerate, you can kind of see the front kind of pitch like that. So that's my kind of feeling, is that it is a softer setup, but at the same time, juxtaposed to that, You've got 20-inch wheels, which I think if you go over some really harsh bumps, that probably transmits just a bit of extra firmness as a result of those lower profile tires. So I wouldn't say it's the best riding vehicle I've ever ridden in, but at the same time, I think it's perfectly competent in terms of its ride. I don't think it's uncomfortable, but I wouldn't say it's the best riding mid-size family SUV. In terms of safety, you've got a full suite of safety features in the Outlander GSR, so given it is the top spectrum, so you've got pretty much everything you need. And I found the safety systems to be pretty well calibrated. They weren't overzealous, they weren't too overly intrusive, and I was using the functionality of the MI Pilot Assist, which essentially kind of allows you to use the adaptive cruise control with stop-go and the lane centering as part of a freeway, highway drive stint. And I thought that did a pretty good job as well, in terms of keeping me in my lane, and also just in terms of the adaptive cruise control. So it's a safe vehicle. It has a 5-star safety rating already. I believe it was tested in 2022 as well. So you've got peace of mind in that sense. So overall, in terms of the drive experience, I think this is a competent family SUV. It drives well for what it is. It's pretty refined, it's pretty quiet, it's pretty comfortable. It's practical on the inside as well. It's got all the features you need, and it drives well. It drives competently. It gives you the amount of confidence you would expect from a mid-size family SUV. So that's quite good. The key consideration is, does it fit in with your use case? So in terms of its claimed electric range of over 80 kilometers, depending on your daily route to work, for example, are you going to be able to go to work and back? That is a key consideration, because if you're driving it around with zero charge all the time, then you're essentially using quite a lot of fuel, because you'll be lugging around a heavier vehicle with a heavy empty battery that isn't doing anything. So really it needs to work for your use case, and you need to be effective and diligent in terms of keeping it charged for it to work for what it's intended to do. But if that is your niche, and if that is a capability that appeals to you, that you can have the benefits of electric, but you want the ability to be able to not have that range anxiety of pure electric, and you've got the backup of the petrol motor, then it might be the vehicle for you. But given it is a vehicle that is being bought with efficiency in mind, important thing to consider is running costs and efficiency. So let's chat about that now. One of the other key selling points for the Outlander PHEV is the fact that, like all Mitsubishis, it is available with Mitsubishi's 10-year, 200,000 kilometer warranty. Although there is a caveat to that, it is actually standard as 5 years, 100,000 kilometers, but if you get it serviced at a Mitsubishi dealer, then over the 10 years you can unlock that 10-year, 200,000 kilometer warranty. Now, in terms of those services, then they are every 12 months in terms of intervals, or every 15,000 kilometers. Over 5 years, it's going to cost you just over $2,000 to service the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV GSR, and Mitsubishi offers a 10-year capped price service program as well. So that's pretty good. Now, in terms of battery warranty, that is 8 years, 160,000 kilometers. Then, in terms of running costs, so this thing can take 91 octane fuel, so that is good. Now, the claimed fuel consumption is only 1.5 litres per 100 kilometres. Now, obviously, that is pretty optimistic in terms of keeping the vehicle charged all the time to be able to achieve that. Not only that, but Mitsubishi claims it can do up to 84 k's in pure electric mode. So we tested those two claims out over our time with the vehicle. These are our results. From 100% to 0% battery charge, we drove 70.5 kilometers on purely electric power before the petrol engine kicked in. This consisted of entirely urban driving at no more than 70 kilometers per hour. Then we wanted to test out fuel efficiency on a fully depleted battery, delivering 8 litres per 100 kilometers on a predominantly urban loop with some highway driving with the battery at zero charge. So those are some of my thoughts on the Outlander GSR plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. A really compelling vehicle in the class overall, and something that should be on your consideration list if you are looking for a new family SUV and you have an emphasis on fuel efficiency. Now, the first thing that I will say about this vehicle in my conclusion is the fact that it's great that Mitsubishi offers a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle and continues to champion that niche in market, because ultimately one of my frequent positions that I come to when reviewing vehicles is that choice is a really good thing. And there are so many hybrid options, there are so many petrol options, there are so many electric options. So the fact that there are plug-in hybrid electric vehicle options from Mitsubishi is a great thing in terms of offering that diversity of choice for the consumer, which I think is a good thing. Because ultimately, this vehicle is a niche vehicle. It will appeal to a specific type of buyer. And I think the fact that it is available as a PHEV for someone who wants to reduce their fuel consumption, wants to dip their toes into electrification, but isn't willing to go that full step, then it's great that this vehicle is offered. It also needs to really work with your daily use case, with your lifestyle. Are you able to charge it essentially regularly, almost every night, to kind of keep it at the charge level to ensure that you can drive it as an electric vehicle? So again, not for everyone, but still a great SUV to look at. One of the key considerations is which variant you go for, because as I mentioned earlier, competition is intensifying. There's a lot of increasingly good value options from Chinese competitors. So I don't think, personally, I wouldn't be spending my money at the top of the range with the GSR. I'd be looking further down in the range. So definitely consider that if you are looking at this vehicle. The next thing to consider is that there is an update coming to this vehicle, as we mentioned in the start. So in 2025, we are going to see an updated Outlander, and that vehicle is going to bring with it a bigger battery pack that also promises more range. It's going to promise more power as well, better fuel efficiency. Not only that, but some work to the suspension as well, some better interior tech as well, and also a Yamaha audio system. So there's a few things that are going to be available on that variant, which makes it a more compelling proposition than probably what it is today. But those changes, they're not going to be astronomical. They're going to be stepped improvements over what this vehicle currently is, and the styling tweaks are also going to be minimal. So only train spotters will really be able to notice the differences. But that is a key thing to consider. So if you are going to be getting an Outlander, GSR, or any variant before the new updated version comes to Australia, make sure you can try to get yourself a good deal in the knowledge that a better version is going to be coming out. So definitely be conscious of that. And you may want to get one before the new one comes out, because until April 1st next year, you can still get the full fringe benefits tax exemption on plug-in hybrid electric vehicles like this. That makes a pretty compelling case if you do want a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle and you want a Mitsubishi Outlander to get one in this pre-update version that we have here. So those are a few things to consider, but do you reckon I've got it right? Do you think I've got it wrong? I'd love to know your opinion about the Mitsubishi Outlander, also specifically the GSR. Do you reckon the GSR is worth it? It looks pretty good. Would you think that's worth it, to stepping up that extra bit of cash just for those styling features? What do you reckon is the pick of the range? Let us know in the comment section down below what you think, and also whether you'd go the Outlander or alternative competition. Let us know in the comment section down below. While you're there, make sure to hit like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram too, and as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.